This is FinTech in 2021 in Vilnius. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn, I'd like to suggest that you go to our website, you register there, and you'll be taken to our OnVent platform, because there we've got way more than just the mainstream. We've got expos, you can connect with our partners, you can connect with other people that are in the conference, we've got different stages, and it's way more interactive. So go to our website, fintechin.lt, you'll see the registration link, and that's how you get into OnVent, and you can connect with everyone. See you there. Hi, welcome back everyone. This is FinTech in 2021, and our next panel is about Neobanking's next big trick, staying big but still staying nimble. And what we're going to be looking at is that over the last few years, we've had a lot of high-profile partnerships between FinTech and the traditional banks. The disruption, the going away of big banks, it hasn't happened. In fact, there's more like collaborations and partnerships. We're going to explore a little bit of that. We're going to look at the way that regulations are always hanging over our head, and some of our FinTechs have been hit with very large compliance fines in the last few years. What does that mean? How does it mean to navigate these waters? And we're going to be looking at, the situation in different countries. How is it? Why are some countries embracing FinTech and allowing them to grow faster than others? Our moderator for this panel is Remco Wienenberg, and Remco is a neobank expert. He's a keynote speaker. He's worked with a lot of different FinTech accelerators like Startup Wise Guys, and he very regularly organizes events, which is doing exactly what we're trying to do here, bring together traditional banks along with the FinTechs, get them talking, and get that dialogue moving along. Remco, how are you today, sir? Everything doing well?
Yeah, perfectly fine, Louis. Thanks for having me here today.
Nice. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming along. Where did you say you were this morning? Hungary?
I'm actually based in Budapest. I represent a company called Pervanol, which is a core banking provider based from Budapest. So,
Okay, very nice. Glad to see you from Budapest. Let's move on with the panel.
hi everyone. My name is Remco. I will be your host today. I'm working as head of partnerships for a company called Pervanol, trying to redefine core banking. And I'm very pleased to have you all here today, besides the technical issues that we suffered here before. So among the panel, we have a very diverse amount of companies ranging from Holland FinTech to Revolut to SME Bank to the European Merchant Bank. And the title of today's panel discussion will be Neobanking's next trick, getting big or staying nimble. And I would like to point out the first question towards Esther, and then I would like to drag on to Andreas to provide some comments on it. Over the last year, we've seen high-profile partnerships: ePay and Revolut, Mambu and Wise, Klarna and Verifone. Is it just business as usual, or are we seeing the ecosystem mature, with strategic partnerships and acquisitions becoming increasingly important?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Esther Groen, and yes, I think this is definitely something that that will be the norm. And if you call it maturing the ecosystem, or maybe even overheating the ecosystem, I don't know what's right. But what we see is that the market is exploding when it comes to acquisition and capital flowing into FinTech. Year to date, and it was just recent research, we're already over $100 billion in capital that's being invested in acquisitions and collaborations in over 900 funding rounds. So I think collaboration is the norm. And also, personally, in my view, the best way for a growth strategy. Going backwards, maybe a couple of years back, everybody wanted to be the winner takes all strategy. I think most of us have left that thought. We simply lost that battle to the US and China years ago. But it's all about collaboration, and it's all about leveraging each other's competencies. And we see great examples in the market already. The examples that you're referring to as well. But for instance, MasterCard and Visa are stepping into the open banking space. MasterCard recently acquired Aya. BNL and Tink are working together. Barclays and Flux stepping into the receipt business, and Banking Circle and SIA. Just really nice examples of new players in the market stepping into collaboration. And I think looking at Europe, this is the inclusive ecosystem that they are working towards too. If you look at the regulatory developments, if you look at the data strategy that they're positioning, if you look at just simply the fact that we are a fragmented region, and we just need to embrace that, collaboration, I think, is the way forward, and definitely one of the key characteristics of a well-performing industry. What do you think, Andreas, as Revolut?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're saying, the partnerships and collaborations, but it's essentially impossible for any new fintech to start a business without first collaborating with a bank.
Absolutely.
Right, with a proper bank, right? Because you wouldn't have, the account, how to pay money to your, employees, leave alone, let's say, client accounts that also banks are providing, or IBANs, localized IBANs, and so on and so forth. So this is already in essence rooted in every fintech's beginning, middle, or whatever stage they are in, right? And I should say that fintech is super healthy ecosystem, partnership ecosystem in that respect. As Esther said, everyone is essentially collaborating, or can really collaborate with anyone across multiple supply chain segments. As you also, Remco, represent this kind of way to change the core banking, right? Again, there are players changing core banking just like you, and there are some other players changing all aspects of the supply chain. So this is rooted in DNA of fintech ecosystem, in my opinion, and it will continue. I really cannot see any wait for that to change anytime soon.
Yeah, and what do you think about that, Montfidos, from SME bank perspective?
Hello, I'm Montfidos. So I wanted to add, basically, of course, Esther and Andrews is right. I think that everything is coming from the consumer, from the customer point of view. And in the beginning, neobanks, they were supposed to be payment services, payment solution for the customers. Now the customer wants to expand and to have a operating system, financial operating system. So basically, what they log in and they use it as we used to use, Microsoft or Apple or whatever. They want a financial operating system to make payments, to get lending, to whatever it's related to financial services. So basically, consumers saying to us that we want this, and basically this will happen. I'm sure that we cannot run from this trend, what is currently happening.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I would like to also ask Sarp, what is your perspective on this from the European merchant bank?
Thank you, Remco. My short answer would be yes, obviously. This consolidation will be foregoing, as we all expected and stated, actually. But maybe I just base this on 3 dimensions, just in a rather detail. First one is the fintech ecosystem itself. We know that it's in a rather mature situation right now, and this consolidation and the existing of the strongest ones while acquiring the rather weaker ones is expected. And also those startups who had once a single proposition targeting a specific segment are now much more open to diversify their products and enhance their services anyways to increase the profitability. So I could say this is one aspect. The second one, I couldn't agree more in terms of Yusuf's comment about the bank's position. We are a bank who is, say, much eager and supportive for SMEs and fintechs specifically. So banks are obviously looking for opportunities in terms of digitalizing their services, as well as creating new revenue sources as well. I mean, considering the pressure over the margins and the commissions, etc. So they are also getting into the equation with possible partnerships and acquisitions, M&As in the industry. And as a third, it's all of our on of our plates actually, but for these non-financial institutions. Also, this is an important issue to get into partnerships with the fintechs to enhance their services as well as using the precious customer data that there is staying throughout this flows, I can say. So, yeah, my opinion is like yours. I believe you'll see a lot of consolidation and partnerships in the industry in the future.
But
Yeah,
this is
that's a very
particularly in
good
the
point.
payment
Yeah.
and the transaction
Yeah, go.
space. So this is particularly, of course, in the payment and the transaction space. I think it's interesting to see how this is. Well, this needs to merge to other parts of the financial industry, being savings, investments, and maybe even pension funds. But we'll address that topic. But the payments and the transaction part of the fintech ecosystem, I completely agree, is mature. The other parts, I think, we have still some ground to cover. I would say.
Yeah, that's a very valid point, Esther. And I think that in general, the market is consolidated, right? So a couple of years ago, of course, the mantra in fintech was we're going to topple traditional banking. But then you learn that fintechs are relying on traditional banks, and banking as a service is actually already provided by most of the major banks, and even APIs and open banking capabilities are starting to show a rise. One question that I would like to point out to Andreas, and then I will let any one of you follow up on it. So bear with me, okay? Some of the largest banks in the world are getting hit with bigger and bigger fines for non-compliance with regulations, sanctions, money laundering. And in June this year, Revolut reported to double of its losses due to huge spending on rise and compliances. Is it a case of more money, more problems? How much are compliance and RegDec going to be the key for the next stage of, let's say, the neobank space and the banking space in general?
It's an amazingly important point, Remco, and I would say that there is no such thing as a perfect regulation. That's one thing. We would like it to be like, oh, this is a perfect regulation in this country or whatever. There is no such thing. But for the sake of regulation, it has to be there, and we have to adhere to whatever the regulation wants, right? But the key important thing to understand, which we may be missing or whatever, is that both the players, neobanks and other players, and the regulation, they want the best for the customer. We are essentially working for the same goal, for the same mutual goal, to make our customers happy. To protect the money. There's on the regulation side, they say, oh, we are most concerned about protecting the money. And on our side, we want to make the services the cheapest, the best, the most useful, and so on. So it's this constant balance towards the mutual goal, right? And I would say that it's good that we are doubling the money on the compliance and all that stuff, because all these fraudsters and crooks and cybersecurity pirates, whatever, they are not sleeping either. They are also like investing the time and money, etc., developing the newest technologies and whatever, how to hack those systems. So it's good. Through innovation, through value added in other areas, we will recoup that, and watch that space when the financial reports comes next year. You will see. I don't want to do any kind of premature announcement, but you will see a different picture.
Very, very interesting. Yeah.
I can comment
Sark.
if you wish. In a similar approach, actually, I can say that this sound management of risk compliance and AML CTF risk management as well. It's essential, obviously, for a strong business, and it's though it is sometimes seen as a cost. It's all actually an asset, we can say, for a company to eliminate any possible and unwanted risks. And having said that, I also think that the fintech ecosystem is still progressing and maybe though rather mature, but though it's unwanted, it's not surprising to see some gaps in terms of the ultimate or the ideal picture and the developing applications in practice. So we know that fintechs, as well as the banks, by the way, while they are integrating into this changing dynamics of the new finance world, a much more connected world, are already investing in compliance and AML, etc. But I guess I believe that the approach here should be more rather providing a discipline and guidance rather than directly punishing, which would kill the spirit of the ecosystem. And this was a topic, by the way, a couple of weeks ago, as you may remember, in Money 2020 in Amsterdam. And I heard that some companies or fintechs had been investing 1/3 of their total cost into these practices. Of course, maybe that's necessary at the moment, but it should also raise a flag in terms of thinking rather smarter ways or approach in terms of using RPA, AI, data analytics, and especially RegTech to eliminate any risks, but move in a much more efficient way, I believe.
It's a very valid point, actually. Yeah. Manfredas, I'll give you the word.
Thanks.
Then Esther, you can follow.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Esther. I just wanted to say that, of course, compliance and RegTech will be playing and is already playing a significant role because, according to the statistics, about and what we currently see, about 10-15% of banks' stuff is related to compliance and IML, which is already a big part, of the company stuff. This is one. The second thing is that already currently the market related to compliance and AML is approximately worth about 300 billion euros. I mean, banks is spending such amount in the world currently for the compliance, AML checks, and so on. So how such a big market cannot be important currently, and of course it will be more important for the future because everyone wants to take a part of 300 billion euros. This is one. The second thing is, of course, why it's important because of the change of the current environment. The COVID, it changed everything what is currently happening. So, for example, previously, if you wanted to open a bank account or do something related to bank, you can arrive to bank and do this and onboard yourself. You show yourself that you are a real physical person, not a mask, not fraudster, as Andres mentioned. Currently is a bit different. You have to open an account, you have to do the same what you were previously doing, but online, and there is a lot of possibilities to do it, not the right person which is supposed to do that. So banks have to fight this. So for sure, Remco, answering your question, this is not future, this is currently happening, and it just, we will see how this will evolve and what size of ML and RegTech will be important for the future.
Yeah, I completely. I don't think that the whole regulatory regime will soften. It may be even getting more strict. I do think that a more open dialogue between regulators, governments, and the industry might help out to take out, I think, a lot of noise and maybe potentially some a lack of understanding on what exactly the industry is doing versus what regulation is actually tackling. That it needs to be there and needs to be sure that that's fair. But is it scalable? As it's currently organized, I have my questions around that. And this typically, as you're pointing out, there's so much money going into compliance that it does sustain a proper conversation on how to do this going forward. And technology needs to play a better role, and particularly also data and data quality. And I like that you already see collectives and cooperation between banks and within the industry to tackle these types of big problems. And within the Netherlands, but also in Scandinavia, you see that banks are starting to collaborate on KYC and data exchange, just to make it more scalable and more persistent. And this is something that governments and regulators should encourage more. And I think a dialogue in that area definitely makes more sense.
Yeah, what I would like to perhaps steer the discussion a little bit, because Esther, you're quite familiar with the Dutch regulatory environment. And actually, one of the main points in the Dutch regulatory environment is the significant amount of investment that fintechs need to do in order to comply with the DNB, the Dutch National Bank. How do you look at that, Andreas, from your perspective? Because Revolut has been, of course, working with the Central Bank of Lithuania for quite some time now. Do you feel that there is a more cooperative ecosystem in Lithuania, let's say, compared to the rest of Europe? And do you think that has benefited you as a bank now?
And look, there's no cutting corners. We have to be very clear about, especially when it comes to regulation, especially within the EU, right, where we have the single regulatory regime by ECB and EBA and many other institutions. So there is no cutting corners, but every jurisdiction, they have their own vision. Let's say every central bank in every country, right? They have their own vision. Some of the countries, some of the markets, maybe they are so mature. I'm not speaking about any of the market, right? But think of any essentially Western European market. You wouldn't necessarily say, oh, we need to put our name on the map and attract all, hundreds of, fintechs because our let's say, customer, competition, finance competition is lagging, or we don't have enough players already. So every market, they have their own priorities, own visions, and how they're going to achieve that, and so on. And it's just, thanks to also a handful of proactive individuals, essentially. It also comes down to the individuals at the Central Bank of Lithuania, at the finance ministry at that time. I'm talking about 5-6 years ago, that actually that vision was born in the heads of these people. And Invest Lithuania also played a good role, that they said, okay, let's put Lithuania on the map, on the global map of fintech ecosystem. And they achieved quite tremendous results, in my opinion. And now maybe it's time to also see, what that gave to the market. How do we go forward, and so on. But just to answer your question, there is no cutting corners. So by entering Lithuania, there is no kind of secret sauce that I can avoid that. But obviously, the market is just differently ready for new entrants than, let's say, other market would be ready.
Yeah, it's a very valid point. Actually, I'm currently myself looking into the Lithuanian market, and there's no cutting corners. That's absolutely clear. But I think that there's a very strong collaborative environment. So my next question would be to Sarp. Could you highlight?
Can I just add a short comment, Remco, actually mentioning about Lithuania? Maybe it would be nice to remember also that according to Basel AML index, Lithuania is ranked as the 9th best country who is in terms of the AML practice, in terms of the positivity. So that's a good outcome. And also I believe and I agree with Andrews that this should be working in a close collaboration. I mean, we are serious guys in terms of these practices, so we are investing and taking actions. And the ideal way to manage this in terms of a nurturing as a keyword, I believe, together. And yeah,
And
that's a very good point.
In addition to this investment, yesterday I think it was announced by Bank of Lithuania that they will be investing additionally 46 million euros into IML and other procedures in order to provide good monitoring and and on-time monitoring.
Yeah, that's a good point. Perhaps, Manfredos, I can ask you one question, and perhaps Sarp, you can comment on that afterwards. Can you name me shortly one of your biggest challenges meeting, complying with the regulation, let's say, with your business?
So there is a lot of challenges. I cannot name one. It's a long topic, I would say. So first of all, you have to have a good business plan in order to start your business, because it's not just you're preparing some documentation, sending to Bank in Lithuania, and then they're approving everything, as Andrews mentioned. No cutting corners. Everyone is having the same rules to enter the market. So then the second one is, of course, when you are entering the market, there is a lot of requirements, which is wallet, of course, in order to be compliant, in order to make your liquidity enough, and to protect the deposits and your customers and so on. So every business has their let's say struggles, problems which you have to solve. So I don't see, Remco, answering your question, I don't see one. There is a series of challenges which you are facing every day, and this is normal, I think.
Yeah, perhaps to give a bit of perspective on that, because the topic, of course, of today's panel is how to build a neobank, right? So what I see from my perspective is that some of the biggest hurdles are lying with the licensing application. And if I point the finger towards Andreas becoming a bank, acquiring a full banking license, which is an enormous operation in order to comply with the regulation, and even obtaining the license and even documentation that needs to be provided, it's just a massive overtaking. So I'm quite interested to get a bit of your perspective.
Nothing is
Sarp,
easy.
and
Nothing
Andreas.
is easy. Look. I will take one saying from our founder, Nick, to like almost for. I think it's gonna stick with me forever. It was early days. We were at like 20 or 30 at Revolut in total back then. And obviously, the challenges were even like bigger, right? We would do everything and etc. But he said once, either at a conference or in the room, somebody was complaining like, but it's not easy, this new procedures, blah, blah, blah. And he would listen very quiet and like very slowly say, nothing in life is easy. in that sense, and it's like, wow, that sticks to me, because who said that it should be easy? So that's also the mantra essentially that also drove us and still driving Revolut, let's say, to achieve not impossible, but you get the point, right? To really, really push the boundaries, because we have that mentality of like, it's not going to be easy. Otherwise, everyone else would do it.
Yeah, I agree
Yes, and
with
not if
Andrews. Just to answer you, Remco, and maybe a bit not to agree what you said about preparing the documentation, because it's maybe the easiest part, I would say. Because when you're drawing a house, making an architecture of the house, it's complicated because you have to make it, but it's the easiest part. Then it starts building a house and then using the house, which is other parts of the story. So documentation is really not the hardest point. Is to make this documentation really work and to make your business plan really sufficient and working in the market.
I can
yeah, so
agree with that,
that's a very good point.
as it's pretty clear. The things that you should do are pretty well defined in terms of the application process. But so I agree in this, as building a house and managing it, there are two different things, and the biggest struggle is at the managing phase. I mean, the market is changing, the dynamics are changing. There are major registrations, and also maybe some guidelines, but going into the details, there are still some undefined things, which are very critical, by the way. This is where the biggest challenge lies, I believe, for this specific issue, and as well as the business implementation as well. Nothing is easy. Yeah.
Do you have something to follow on, Esther?
No, I think you're all. I agree. Getting a license is a strategy. that you need to execute in all layers of your organization, right? And it's getting a license is work and hard work, but maintaining it and staying compliant and really operating like a licensed and regulated organization is something that just really needs to boil down to every individual in your organization. That's in essence how it works, and rightfully so. This is a trust game. And if you can't trust that your money is and your transactions are processed in the right way, we all suffer, and we all feel the consequences of that. So I think in that sense, it's a very collective game. I do see, and then going back to the initial point, with neobanks having a starting point that's more technology and data driven, it is interesting to see that you can comply and build this in a different way. And I think the dialogue with regulators around that is really important.
Yeah, it's a good point. I was having an analogy yesterday at a conference where I said, well, what's the reality of building a neobank, right? So I made a comparison to building a rocket ship. You might have the technology to bring people to Mars, but the further you go, the more increased dangers there will be, also in the regulatory environment. So if you have everything in check from the launch pad, the moment the rocket takes off, you will avoid many, many costs or penalties or other problems along the way. So to build a little bit on that question, because we're almost running out of time, and I want to get each of your key takeaways before we finish the session. Do you think that neobanks are known for the customer centricity? Is customer acquisition about having a killer feature? Is it about convenience? Is it simplicity? Or is it just simply marketing management, savvy marketing management? What do you think about that, Andreas?
It's like Donald Trump calling Tim Cook Apple, right? In that meeting. Anyway, look, it's in the end, it's still the product. Look, it's the product. We still haven't invested heavily in marketing. Some others have, right? There's let's say US banking players. They invest heavily, dozens of millions into marketing, and it's playing out as well. The kick start is still about the product, whether you call it customer centricity, which is like has different meanings actually. It has to be. You have to. I had this again analogy or like saying that it has to be the wow moment. It has to be the Uber moment, right? Is taxi bad? Taxi is bad? No. But when you realize that there is Uber, like, oh my God, where have you been before? It's similar with banking. Are banking in general, other players, legacy players, bad? No, they are not. But when you realize that there is other players, easier, cheaper, faster, you say, oh my God, where have you been before? And some prefer that. It's like buying a sliced sausage or the whole sausage at the shop, right? For me,
talking about marketing, Andreas, I remember the famous.
For me, the analog is really simple. Once you try sliced sausage, you would never go back to the whole sausage and cut it yourself, although the taste is the same.
Yeah. That's a funny analogy. I remember though talking about the Revolut marketing that one time you guys had a funny commercial in the tube about how many customers bought a vegan sausage roll. I remember that one.
Let's not get into funny. That. That's not another. The bloopers of marketing.
Yes. So,
no, but it's really about solving a problem, right? And whether that's the customer journey, whether that's convenience, whether that's complexity, I think it's about solving a problem, big or small, in a way that, like you're rightfully saying, Andreas, is new and innovative. And I think on the point where we are in the financial industry, when it comes to at least the payment and transaction business, the whole convenience and customer journey element, I think we've tackled that to a large extent. I think the next game is definitely around expanding, creating holistic, open finance type of products and solutions, building in and embedding more data sources, really providing people the insights and the controls that they're seeking. I think that will be the next game. And I think then you're really going back to convenience, product, transparency, and technology.
That's a very valid point. I think because we're closing in a little bit on the last few minutes of this panel discussion, I would like to ask towards Manfredas and Sarp. We're cautiously emerging from the COVID pandemic, or at least from the initial shock, because the real shock is set to come even later from now. What is your big key takeaway for the fintech sector, and how do you think that the fintech industry will evolve in the next coming few years?
So basically, to cut it short, because it's also a big topic, I also agree, and what was previously said by Andrews, basically what we're taking from the COVID situation is, of course, that everyone wants to have easy access, easy onboarding. It's just it's just new normal. I would say the speed, what Andres was mentioning, it's new normal. I mean that the customer is not even not even saying it's wow that I'm being onboarded within 5 minutes. It's normal. They expect to be onboarded in 5 minutes. They expect to have a easy access on the app or whatsoever. So this is new normal. What is next? We will see. I think that, as Andres mentioning, he is really right. Someone will figure out the new Uber or something else. So this will be a boom. But basically, what it's most important, I think, for the consumer, for the customer, whoever it will be, it's I think that it will be a trust on the provider, on the bank, or if will be a fintech whatsoever. It will be a trust of this organization. If his data will be protected, if his money or whatsoever will be protected,
Her money.
Yes,
his anyone's money will be protected, so I
it's
think that the trust will really the security of the systems and trust will be really very important for the future.
Sarp, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. We just have a couple of minutes, but I can say that indeed this COVID pandemic has been a serious test for the fintechs, and it has proved positive at the end. I would like to give some data about a research conducted by Cambridge University. They found that these highly restricted countries, within these countries, the fintech performance was significantly higher than the less restricted countries. To give a much more specific example, for the digital payments, actually, while there's 30% growth in the highly restricted countries, for the others it was just half of this growth, as an example. So we can say that this was an opportunity to prove these fintechs about their flexibility, adapting their business models, serving these customers they can at least at its highest potential remotely, and adapting their services and products to the emerging needs of the customers. And maybe not just for fintechs, it will also open a door for all of the other online initiatives, and maybe with the extended circle around of the in the end of the ecosystem, I can say. So obviously the fintechs are the winners throughout this pandemic, I can say, from my view.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. Do Andreas and Esther, do you have one last 2 cents for me? Some key takeaway
you want to
from
go
today.
first, Andreas? No, I think COVID has really shown that I think people are becoming more and more aware, and also organization, about their financial positions. And I think this is where neobanks and fintech can really play a role. I still believe, as with the opening point, collaboration is the way forward. I hope that open finance will be different than PSD2. So I really see. I hope to see some really cool industry initiatives to pave that path. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. And Andreas, any last idea?
Yeah, from my side, it's really simple and quick. It's COVID really showed that impossible is nothing. we couldn't even think how we would transform.
True.
Normally, we would fly in to the conference to run this panel, and now we did it, right? And it's going to be as equally a good content as it would have been otherwise, a part of the coffee and chat and so on. So, but even a part of that, the way, the speed, how businesses can actually pivot, especially fintechs, right, to focus on different areas. The way that they can, start the workplace. The workplace requires another session like that, right, to cover all sorts of innovations that happened on that field. So my quick, easy, short messages, it just strengthen the understanding that nothing is impossible.
Thank you very much, everyone. So Esther, Andreas, Montfidas, and Sarp, thank you so much for your contributions. I think we touched a little bit on the bank fintech space, the regulation space, the neobanking model space, and we didn't even touch on some other topics I wanted to talk about, such as central bank digital currencies, which is emerging trends. And if any of you would be interested to talk with me about that later, then let's do that. So let's conclude here, and have a great day to all of you. Sunny greetings from Budapest. Yeah, and thanks for being here today.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Remco.
guys.
Thank you to everyone, and thank
Bye,
you
everybody.
to Remco as well for moderating that discussion. Remco, thank you very much for leading that panel session. We covered so many really interesting topics. I mean, nothing in life is easy. That's the big takeaway I took away from that. What are some of your thoughts and summary of the moderation?
That's a very good question. I think that the first point that we touched upon was the bank fintech partnership relationship. I mean, a couple of years ago in 2018, 2017, there was really a mantra that the fintechs were going to topple the banks, to kick them out or to oppose serious opposition towards them. But now it's obviously very visible that banks and fintechs are reliant upon each other. I mean, if you think about the fact that neobanks, they store their current accounts in either the central bank or in the banking partner, then you cannot cut them out. Yeah. And we have seen a lot of innovation happening in that space, specifically in open banking and banking as a service. And we've seen some really big partnerships happening. Just to give a few examples, like ePay and Revolut or Mambu and Wise, many of these large players. And then one of the more important topics to address is that a lot of fintech companies and neobanks are getting fined for not meeting the regulation or not complying with the regulation. And as Andreas in the panel said from Revolut, there is no cutting corners. Fintechs, they need to comply, and otherwise they will face hefty sums. And I think what's very important there is to think about when you design a neobank is to have it compliant from day one, and not just try to grow and get as many users as possible, but to meet the ever increasing, more stricter regulation throughout Europe. I think that a point that Esther from Holland FinTech addressed is that Europe is very scattered, right? So we have the ECB, we have the FCA, but the regulations throughout the countries, they vary. And it would be very good to get the regulations standardized and more easy to understand. Then I think that some other touch point that we have is, what's the real neobanking model? So one of the points that was pointed out is that it's all about serving the customer. And a good example on that is Uber. If you realize that Uber is so much better than your traditional taxi, you will never go for the traditional taxi anymore. And this has, of course, been the angle of fintech, is to, at the end, be 100% customer-centric and to develop solutions and features that just makes the lives of people easier. I think that, and one other interesting part is, of course, but that was kind of obviously, is that the pandemic has set massive acceleration for the neobanks. So nobody wants to go to a branch anymore to open up a bank account. It's not necessary anymore. We want 5 minutes onboarding. We want everything digital. And this will have consequences in the future as well, because the way that we have a touch point with our bank is going to massively change. Because everybody's paying with Apple Pay. You're doing your transfers to Revolut. You're doing your transfer to N26, some of these neobanks. So it's going to be interesting time, and we're going to be looking at what's next. What's going to be the next Revolut? Indeed. And as you said, nothing is impossible, and that was a very good takeaway. So thanks for having me today, and I hope the panel was enjoyable. And also a shout out to the panelists, to Sarp, and to Manfredos, and to Esther and Andreas. Thank you for being here today.
All right, Remco, thank you very much for your time and your excellent moderation. See you soon.
Yeah. Hey, have a good one, huh? Yeah.
Okay. So that was our session on neobanking. How do they go? How do they evolve? Thank you very much for watching, and we're going to move along with our next session.